how to band your horse's mane and to put in a fake tail for a horse show. So the first things that you need for banding mane are a comb, preferably one that's a little bit wider so you can even out the bands and make them the same amount of hair in each one. You need the bands, and I use sorrel and white bands because his mane is half sorrel and half white. For the sorrel part of his mane I use the sorrel bands, and for the white I use the white bands. But for some people, if they're really good at banding, then you can use the opposite color of the mane. So I would actually use the white in the sorrel part and the sorrel in the white part. And that just helps it stand out more, so if your bands are all even down the line, it'll just make it look more professional. And if you have one, a clip is really good to use because it helps you hold the mane back so you can get the band in without other hair getting in the way of your bands. Alright. So the first thing you want to do is brush out the mane so that there's no snarls when you're banding it. And you're going to use the comb to pick the right amount of mane, usually about that much. It depends on the thickness of your horse's mane. Usually if your horse's mane is thicker, you might do the bands a little thicker, but since Play-Doh has pretty thin mane, I tend to do them thinner. You want to make sure that you grab all of the mane around the part that you're banding so that there's no loose hair sticking up or sticking to the side of it. Also make sure you tighten the band as tight as you can go so that it doesn't slip down or fall out during a show. Then you're going to grab the bottom of the mane of the band and tighten it from underneath so that it'll help it lay down nicer. You can try to get as close to possible as the same amount as the rest of your bands. There, you do that part. Again, grab the underneath of the mane and tighten it that way. Usually his mane is cut a little bit shorter than this, so it might be a little harder to band if the mane is shorter. Sometimes it's also good to, when you're ending the band, make sure that you're twisting it down so the end of the band is facing down, so that'll help it stay more flat too. So then grab the underneath and tighten it. As you can see, the bands are even. So if you were to look in the front of the mane, you can see that they line up. You want to make sure you line them up as straight as possible. So you're just going to continue to do that for the rest of the mane. It gets a little bit thicker in the center area than the front and the end. So usually I'll do them a little bit thinner just so they don't stick up as much in the middle. Then when I get to the end, he is just missing a little bit of his mane from trying to get grass underneath his fence. But I just kind of make those a little bit thicker because you can't really keep the band in if it's really small. Another thing that I do after a band, if he has a little bit too long of mane, I'll just trim it after I band so it's more straight, because banding might make it a little bit choppy, so you can just cut the straight line. And another thing is, it's easier to band right after a bath because your horse's mane will be wet, and it's a lot easier to not have flyaway mane or anything when it's wet, because it'll help it stay down nicer. Now I'm going to show you how to put in a fake tail. So the things that you need for a fake tail is obviously the fake tail, and you can find them from some different websites, and sometimes certain tack stores will have them. I got mine from a website. You're going to want bands, again, and preferably the same color as the tail, so because the most thing you want is for it to blend in with the tail so it doesn't look fake. And you're going to want scissors, and you're going to want 2 zip ties. There's many different ways to put in a fake tail, but this is just one of the ways that I learned a couple years ago. Your scissors. And a brush. I always wash the fake tail before and after shows. It just helps it look nicer and more professional. The first thing you want to do is brush out the tail and the fake tail. Oh, another thing that would probably be easier when you're putting a fake tail is to use that same clip that you used for the mane. Let me grab that. So first grab a section, this top section of the horse's tail. You're just going to clip that up. Now you're going to feel where the tailbone is, because you want the knob of the fake tail to be a little bit higher than the tailbone, the bottom of the tailbone. His tailbone ends right about here, so I'm going to put the fake tail right there so that if in the class or when I'm practicing, if it lowers a little bit, it won't be completely under the tailbone.